not lost on the fact that here in Southern California, December isn't that bad, especially in terms of the weather. Having grown up in Montana, I know what winter can be like. And here I am sitting out on a park bench and letting the little stream go by. A stream that in Montana or Minnesota, where I went to college for a couple of years, would have been frozen solid, as would have been my nostrils, my eyeballs, my breath, right? So for those of you that are in the frigid dead of winter, I feel you. I feel you. And where I grew up, we had to plug in our car overnight, not because they were electric, but because if we didn't plug in the block heater and keep the fluids warm, they would freeze solid and then everything would break in the morning, if it would start at all. I remember even going to school in Minneapolis, that the car that I took to school, which my dad found at a wrecking yard for $300 and literally pounded the dents out from the inside. One thing we weren't aware of until the winter set in is that the defroster didn't work. And so there were nights when I would drive from the campus out to the local suburbs for an internship I was doing, and I would be scraping the inside of the windshield with my driver's license or credit card, making it snow inside the car while I drove down the freeway, singing at the top of my lungs, "Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow." Winter. Isn't it interesting that generations ago decided to mark December 25th as the day to celebrate Jesus' birth and Christmas? Most historians would say Jesus most likely was born in the spring. Don't really know what day, of course. But it doesn't seem odd to me at all that they would choose the dead of winter for this new celebration of new life, right? And of a new era for humanity. And as I think about that first Christmas scene, it dawns on me that it wasn't called Christmas then, right? That all of the things that we associate with Christmas had not yet been established. There were no nativity sets, right? There was no angels floating around above Christmas trees. There were no Christmas trees for that matter. There was no Santa Claus, of course, which came hundreds of years later. So all of the things that we immediately associate with Christmas didn't even exist at the very first Christmas, at the inception of the holiday, at the birth of Christ. And in fact, you don't have to dig into the story too hard to understand how stressful that had to be on the entire family. I mean, here's a pregnant teenager trying to explain to her fiance that yes, she's pregnant, but it wasn't by another guy. It was by God. Yeah, that must have been really difficult for Joseph to swallow. In fact, if it weren't for the visitation of the angel saying, yes, she's telling the truth, I can imagine Joseph might have made different choices. But bolstered by his faith, they had to make this long trip to Bethlehem, and it wasn't, I'll be home for Christmas. No, they had to leave their hometown, go to Bethlehem. Why? To pay taxes. I don't know about you, but I rarely associate paying taxes with Christmas, and yet that's what brought Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem, away from their families, right? And then when they get there, there's no room. There's no place for them to sleep. A pregnant woman ready to give birth at any point, and yet there's just no accommodations, and so they end up in a barn, right? And of course, we immediately romanticize the whole thing, that the angels were lowing, the poor baby wakes, the little Lord Jesus, no crying he makes. Well, if he's fully human and fully God, I'm assuming that he probably cried, right? Because he was either wet or hungry or tired. That's what babies do. And so imagine, if you can, try to imagine, if you can, the stress associated with that very first Christmas, right? No hospital, no doctor, no nurse, no anything. Just a teenage lady pregnant for the first time. She doesn't fully understand. How could she, right? And her fiance is going along for the ride. And something miraculous is happening. Of course, birth itself is miraculous. There's something transcendent. But the way we remember Christmas, the way we celebrate Christmas, the way we commemorate Christmas is all romanticized and homogenized, pasteurized, right? That wasn't that way. It was just a barn, a manger, right? No crib for a bed. That part's right. Yeah, we even think that the 3 wise men showed up in all of their robes and their glory, and the camels knelt down and they offered their gifts to this baby. But historians would say, one, there wasn't 3 wise men, there were 3 gifts. There could have been 25, nobody knows for sure. And they wouldn't have gotten to Jesus, to the house, when they gave the gifts until Jesus was around 2 years old. And we understand that because when Herod was threatened by this king of the Jews, this prophecy, he made a decree that all babies 2 years old and younger were wiped out. So imagine that. Mary has this baby, this Christ child, and yes, the angels are rejoicing, but it doesn't take very long before they realized that her son's life is in danger, right from the beginning. And so then they have to flee to Egypt, which isn't their home country, right, to a foreign land, and hide out for fear of the death of their child, that their child's going to be murdered by this crazy ruler. That doesn't sound peaceful, right? That doesn't sound like peace on earth, goodwill to all, as the angels declared. Which raises the question, really the question of this video is, what does that mean? The angels are rejoicing at the birth of Christ, and the Bible captures this scene, which again we've romanticized in cards and videos and on it goes, and toys. Peace on earth, goodwill to all. But we know that isn't the case, that up until this day, this very moment, there is war happening on this earth. There isn't peace to all. So what does that mean? And I think I've sort of just gone along for the ride for many years and gone along with this romanticized vision of Christmas, that very first Christmas, which again wasn't called Christmas yet, and not really digging into the historical context to understand how stressful that whole thing really had to be for Mary and Joseph, maybe for the baby himself, right? That they are way out of sorts. They're not with their family. They're not gathering round the Christmas tree to sing songs, right? And they are fleeing for their lives, even after the child's born. So it raises that question. I keep coming back to that question. If the angels are declaring at the birth of Jesus, peace on earth, goodwill to all, glory to God in the highest, what are they talking about? What do they mean? Is that just a happy song for them to sing at this momentous occasion? Well, it is, but it's not just that. So my understanding now is that when the angels are singing peace on earth, they're not just talking about peace all around the globe. They're saying peace is this child. Peace has been born. The Prince of Peace is now on earth. The Prince of Peace, the source of peace, has come to the earth. And of course, we know that his life, Jesus' life, wasn't filled with all happy, joy, peaceful all the time, right? We don't even hear much about his childhood, and then he gets to be 12 years old, and the first thing we hear is that he gets separated from his parents, and they're freaking out. And where's Jesus? And I thought he was with you. No, I thought he was with you. And searching all over to find him, and he is off in the temple teaching something to the elders of the church with great wisdom. But of course, his parents, as they would be, are freaked out. What happened to Jesus? Right? Another just human, stressful moment. And of course, you fast forward to that story and imagine being the mother of this boy who now has grown up and has become the center of attention, both for better and for worse, for his miracles and for his teachings, is now accused of blasphemy, of tearing at the fabric of what the Jewish nation has believed. And it's just, the irony is so thick that for hundreds of years in exile, the Jews are reading the scriptures and the prophecies about this Messiah that would come, and when he comes, it doesn't look like what they expected, and so they reject Jesus as the Messiah. And we know that he gets crucified not for anything that he'd done, right? Oh my word. Crazy story, filled with all sorts of twists and turns, adventures, and lots of stress. Not so much peace, right? As we approach Christmas, the 4 themes of the Advent season are peace, joy, hope, and love. But I begin to understand that the peace, the joy, the hope, the love that we long for, right? That we long for at Christmas time and throughout the year, it is Christ, right? The baby is the peace, the love, the hope, and the joy. And I think that gets lost in the milieu, in the mix of Christmas. So here am I, thousands of years later, and Christmas is coming, it's upon us, and I feel all the pressures that we all do of wanting Christmas to be perfect, but seeing it all afraid around the edges and feeling afraid around the edges myself, and longing for that peace and hope and love and joy to be my experience, to be my family's experience. And it's not always that way. Sometimes there's some beautiful moments, and a lot of times there's stressful moments, confusing moments, painful moments. Christmas time is a time when our expectations are high, but the realities of our world are obvious, and they contradict these hopes that we have. So what do we do with this? I'm asking myself, what do I do with this miraculous story that has impacted history and has impacted my life directly and my family as I'm going through my own chaos? Where do I find the peace, the love, the hope, and the joy that is promised through the birth of this child? And I realize it's not in the externals. It's not in everything coming together and the meal being perfect and the presents being perfect and the tree being perfect and all the things that we are told makes for a perfect Christmas, right? The song says it's the most wonderful time of the year. Why? Because this is in place and that's place and all these things are glowing and shining and the snow is falling gently and it's not even cold, right? But the truth is we're scraping the windows, shoveling the snow, and just trying to make it through life without losing our joy, without losing hope, still feeling peace and love in our hearts. And I guess I'm feeling, as much as I have in any season, how important it is to center my focus again internally rather than externally, rather than buying into the narrative that Christmas will be perfect if X, Y, Z happens on this date and time and place, and this meal comes out this certain way, and suddenly I become a living Norman Rockwell painting, right? Somehow that will bring what my heart longs for. My heart longs for connections and contributions, and that doesn't happen through all the external things. That's the false narrative, the false promise of our commercialized Christmas. And Christmas isn't about, ultimately, it comes down to this realization that Christmas isn't about the what and the when and the where, or even the why. It's the who. The who around the tree, like in Whoville, or Charlie Brown Christmas, when Charlie Brown himself says, Christmas isn't about the gifts under the tree, it's not about what's under the tree, it's about who's around the tree. And the who's have the same realization. You can't steal our Christmas because Christmas is in our hearts. Christmas is what's happening inside, way more than it's what's happening outside. In fact, what I'm adopting this year, and I offer to you, is the fact that all of the great things about Christmas on the outside isn't what brings joy and peace and hope and love. That's just an expression of the joy and the peace and the hope and the love that I'm feeling, right? That's the external manifestation of what's happening inside, not vice versa. Life, as we know, is an inside-out proposition. We don't find purpose and meaning out there, even though we search for it. We find purpose and meaning, happiness and joy, the things that really fulfill us inside. They're with us all along because we're made in the image of the one who is peace and love and joy and hope. Doesn't just bring it, but is that, the embodiment of those things. Hope and love and peace and joy aren't just things. They are a person. The one who made it all, spoke it into existence, created us, you and I, in God's image, came down to say, hey, I'm not watching you from afar, not from a distance, like the old Bette Midler song, right? I didn't just wind up the clock and let it go and wonder what's going to happen, but I understand exactly what it is to be human, because I experienced it myself, Jesus, right? And I love that. I love that more than I ever have. That I don't have to wonder if God understands what I'm going through, if he feels what I feel, if he's somehow removed from my experience. No, God knows from experience exactly what it's like. His circumstances were unique. Thankfully, I wouldn't want to have to live his life, right? But the emotions are the same. The human emotions, the highs, the lows, the in-betweens, the victories, the defeats, the disappointments, the betrayal, all the things that make life what it is. And I'm reminded yet again that if I allow gratitude and grace to lead me, surely goodness and mercy will follow. If I allow gratitude and grace to lead me, surely goodness and mercy will follow. So rather than pursuing love and joy and peace and hope, searching frantically for it out there in a thing or a person or a song or a, realize that all of that bubbles up from within, because the one who created me is within me. He's with me always. Doesn't matter where I go, there he is. There I am too, right? And together I can peel back the veneer and all of the distractions. Just be still and know that God is here, not there somewhere, but here. And within me are the things that I seek and I long for so much. And there's not just enough for me, but there's enough for me to share. And so I get to give. I don't give to get, but I get to give the love, the joy, the peace, and the hope that I have so freely received. As I've said before, and I will say throughout this Christmas season, the best present of all is presence. And that's what Emmanuel means, God with us. God's gift to us is his presence, the best present of all. So enjoy it, feel it, revel in it, and be it. Be the love, be the joy, be the peace, be the hope that we have so freely received. Joy to your world. God has come and he's with us. He's with you.